It was a quiet Friday afternoon at Lincoln High, a small-town school in Colorado. The gym was buzzing with excitement. The annual spring dance was just a week away. Posters covered the walls, pop music echoed down the hallways, and students whispered about who was going with whom. But in one corner of the cafeteria sat Ethan Walker, a 17-year-old senior with a scholarship and a part-time job at a gas station. His clothes were clean but worn, his hands smelled faintly of motor oil, and his sneakers had seen better days. He wasn't poor by spirit, but life had never handed him anything easily. Ethan was practical, humble, and focused on his dream, getting into a state college and building a better future. Every dollar he earned went into his savings jar. So while most of his classmates were talking about tuxedos and limo rentals, Ethan just smiled quietly, pretending he didn't care. But there was one person who could make him care: Ava Reynolds. Ava was 19, a nursing intern who volunteered at the school's health center twice a week. Her calm voice, caring nature, and warm smile had made her something of a mystery to everyone. She was older, mature, and always carried herself with quiet confidence. Ethan had seen her hundreds of times, sometimes helping a student with a twisted ankle, other times sitting under the oak tree reading medical notes. He'd never dared to talk to her for long, except for the occasional excuse to visit the clinic. "Hey, I think I need a bandage," he'd say, when it was really just an excuse to see her smile. That afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the bleachers, Ethan saw Ava packing up her books. Something in him clicked, maybe courage, maybe madness. He walked over, palms sweating, heart racing. "Hey, Ava," he began, trying to sound casual. I was wondering, would you maybe want to come to the dance with me?" For a moment, Ava froze. No one had ever asked her before. Most students saw her as unreachable, someone already living in a different world. Then slowly, a gentle smile curved on her lips. "I'd love to," she said softly. Ethan blinked. "Wait, you mean yes?" She laughed lightly. "Yes, but only if you promise not to wear those oil-stained sneakers." He grinned wide. "Deal!" As she walked away, his friend Mark came running. "No way, dude. You asked the nurse? The same one everyone's afraid to talk to?" Ethan shrugged, still grinning. "She said yes, man. Guess I'm going to the dance." What Ethan didn't know was that Ava Reynolds wasn't just a nursing student. Her father, Charles Reynolds, was one of Denver's most powerful men, CEO of Reynolds Medical Group, owner of 3 hospitals, and a man who didn't like surprises. And when he learned his daughter had accepted a date with a small-town gas station boy, the evening that should have been magical was about to turn into something far more dramatic. Part 2. The Dance and the Truth. The night of the spring dance arrived. The gym was transformed with twinkling lights, red and white balloons, and the faint smell of punch and popcorn in the air. Everyone came dressed to impress. Sparkling dresses, polished shoes, nervous smiles. Ethan showed up wearing a borrowed suit and shoes that were one size too big. But he looked sharp, confident even. He'd saved up to buy Ava a simple white corsage, nothing fancy but from the heart. When Ava arrived, the entire room seemed to pause. She wore a soft blue dress that shimmered under the lights, her hair tied in loose curls. She looked like something out of a dream. Ethan stared, speechless. "You look—" "Wow," she smiled. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Gas Station." They laughed, and soon the music carried them into a rhythm of their own. They danced, talked, and laughed, until time itself seemed to disappear. For the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about money, work, or college, just her. Then the gym doors opened. The crowd went silent as a tall man in a dark suit stepped inside. His presence was impossible to ignore. Broad-shouldered, stern-faced, and commanding. A chauffeur stood behind him. Ava froze. "Oh no," she whispered. "That's my dad." Ethan's heart dropped. Her dad? Charles Reynolds's gaze swept across the room until it landed on Ethan. The man's voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable edge. "Ava Reynolds, we're leaving. Now!" Whispers rippled through the students. Reynolds, the CEO, the nurse's daughter. Ethan felt the weight of every eye in the gym. "Wait, Reynolds? You're that Reynolds?" he asked softly. Ava nodded, guilt shadowing her face. "I wanted to tell you. I just didn't want this to change how you saw me." Her father turned to Ethan. "So you're the boy who thought it appropriate to ask my daughter to a high school dance?" Ethan stood straighter, his hands trembling slightly. "Yes, sir. I just thought she deserved to have fun like everyone else." Charles studied him silently. The room was so quiet, even the music had stopped. Then Ava stepped forward, voice trembling but firm. "Dad, please. Ethan's kind. He treats people with respect. Isn't that what you've always told me to look for?" Her father's eyes softened slightly. After a long pause, he sighed. "You've grown up, Ava." Then he turned to Ethan. "Son, I misjudged you. Maybe I've spent too long looking at titles instead of character." He extended his hand. Ethan hesitated, then shook it. "Take good care of my daughter tonight," Charles said quietly. "And maybe one day you'll come visit the hospital on an internship, perhaps." Ava smiled through teary eyes. "Thank you, Dad." The music started again, and as the night went on, the whispers turned to smiles. Ethan and Ava danced once more under the same lights, but now with something unspoken between them. A week later, a letter arrived in Ethan's mailbox. It was embossed with gold, Reynolds Medical Foundation Scholarship. Inside was a note written in firm handwriting. "Good men deserve a chance. C.R." Ethan smiled, holding the letter against his chest. That night at the dance had changed everything. Sometimes all it takes is one act of courage to bridge two worlds and prove that kindness, not wealth, is what truly defines a person. The night of the spring dance arrived. The gym at Lincoln High looked magical. Strings of fairy lights hung from the ceiling, paper lanterns glowed softly, and the air was filled with the scent of flowers and teenage excitement. Students twirled across the floor, laughter echoing under the disco lights. Ethan Walker stood near the entrance, adjusting the collar of his second-hand suit. It wasn't much, just something he'd found at a thrift shop and carefully pressed at home. The shoes he wore were a size too big, borrowed from his neighbor, but he'd polished them until they shined. His palms were sweaty, but his heart was steady. Tonight wasn't about perfection. It was about courage. And then she arrived. When Ava Reynolds walked into the gym, time seemed to slow. Every conversation hushed, every eye turned toward her. She wore a flowing blue dress that shimmered in the light, paired with a simple silver necklace. Her hair was loosely curled, and her smile, soft, sincere, and unguarded, made Ethan's chest tighten. He stepped forward, almost forgetting to breathe. "You look—" "Wow," he said, his voice barely a whisper. She smiled back, eyes twinkling. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Ethan chuckled. "Thanks. These shoes have seen better days, though." She glanced down and laughed. "They'll do just fine." They walked hand in hand onto the dance floor. The music shifted to a slow tune, and under the warm glow of the lights, they began to move together. For a few magical hours, Ethan forgot about everything. Money, worries, the world outside. There was only her. The laughter, the music, the heartbeat of two people who came from different worlds, but felt perfectly in sync. She told him about her classes, her dream to become a nurse, her love for helping people. He told her about his job, his plans for college, and the endless nights he worked under the gas station lights, thinking of something better. "You know," she said softly, "you're not like most people here. You actually listen." Ethan smiled. "Maybe that's because I don't get to talk to someone like you every day." For a moment, it felt like the start of something neither of them expected, a story that might actually last. But fairy tales have a way of ending too soon. Outside the school, a black limousine rolled to a stop. The door opened, and a man in a crisp grey suit stepped out, his presence commanding, his expression unreadable. It was Charles Reynolds, Ava's father, CEO of one of the biggest hospital networks in the state. He walked through the gym doors, and the music faded. Students stopped dancing, whispers spread like wildfire. Ava froze mid-step, her eyes wide. Her father's deep voice cut through the silence. Ava Reynolds. We're leaving. Ethan blinked, confused. Wait, Reynolds? As in, yes, she whispered, lowering her gaze. He's my father. Ethan's face went pale. Around him, students exchanged looks of disbelief. He suddenly felt the weight of the entire room pressing on his chest. Her father's sharp eyes fixed on Ethan. So you're the boy who asked my daughter to a dance. Do you even know who she is? Ethan took a breath, his hands trembling slightly, but he didn't back down. I know she's kind. I know she didn't care that my hands smell like gasoline. She said yes to me when she didn't have to. That's all I need to know. The room went silent again. Even the DJ didn't dare move. Ava's father stared at him for several seconds, long, heavy seconds that felt like hours. Then Ava stepped forward, her voice steady but emotional. Dad, please stop. He's a good person. You always told me to respect people for their hearts, not their wallets. The man's stern expression softened slightly. The tension in his jaw eased. He looked at his daughter, then back at Ethan. You've grown up, Ava, he said quietly. Then after a pause, he nodded toward Ethan. And you, keep that courage. It'll take you farther than money ever will. He turned to leave. But before stepping out, he added, have a good night, both of you. The whispers resumed, but they weren't cruel anymore. They were filled with awe. Ethan stood still, stunned, as Ava turned to him with a sad smile. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. You reminded me what real kindness looks like. He wanted to say something, to ask if he'd ever see her again, but she was already walking toward the door, her blue dress swaying gently behind her, and then she was gone. Weeks passed. Life went back to normal, or as normal as it could be after something like that. Ethan threw himself into work and studies, trying not to think too much about the girl with the blue dress. Then, one chilly morning, a letter arrived in the mail. It was thick with gold trim and the embossed seal of the Reynolds Foundation. Ethan opened it carefully, his hands shaking. Inside was a printed letter and a handwritten note at the bottom. Dear Mr. Walker, on behalf of the Reynolds Foundation, we are pleased to offer you a full scholarship for your upcoming college education. Your hard work, determination, and character represent the values we strive to support. Charles Reynolds, CEO. Handwritten below. Good men deserve a chance. CR. Ethan sat down, staring at the letter. His heart raced, his vision blurred. He couldn't believe it. That night, as he stood under the same stars that once shone over the dance, he smiled quietly to himself. One small act of courage, asking someone far beyond his world to a simple school dance, had changed his life forever. Sometimes love doesn't care about class or money. It only asks for honesty, courage, and the heart to take a chance.